I don't know if they have it or not, but anyway, thank you, Jessica. As Jessica mentioned, my name is Philippe Routhier. I am the program manager, and I lead the ESG and sustainability program at Box, so our environmental, social, and governance program. And today, what I want to bring to you is very simple. I think ESG is a people power practice, right? That is based on trust, practical execution, and also is built on non-traditional talent. And you'll find out a little bit more about that later. And the way we build and transform and have been in the journey of our program is not only by building on frameworks and big policy, but it's also through our community and building community. So to understand a little bit how I lead, I want to give you a little bit of background on me. So you might wonder why you see a chef picture in an ESG conference, right? So my path begins in an unexpected place. I was born in Peru, and I worked almost 20 years in professional kitchens. So there is where I learned systems, people. I heard about a lot of circular economy. I think chefs are, we live that practice. You know, we push the equipment that we have till it cannot work anymore, and we fix it again and again. We use ingredients almost 100%, right? We live in that constraint all the time. And so I think I was like living that language before I was even knowing and speaking it. Then I got hired Box to the workplace services team, and first I started running their food programs. We did 4,000 to 5,000 meals a day, so it was a huge program, shipping programs, started working more on workflows, corporate kind of lingo. And I think none of these wasn't labeled ESG at that time, but I think it was the same core principles of it. It's like systems, working with people, and building trust with that people. And then the pandemic hit. Of course, you all been there. The offices closed, food programs shut down. But Box is a company that's very focused on its values, and one of those is being an owner. And they sought out us, workplace services, to look for opportunities. They didn't lay off anyone at the time. And at that time, they hired a VP of Communities and Impact that brought sustainability and ESG background, and she wanted to start building the program. So my boss at the time, Pom, for Workplace Services, came and said, hey, there's this thing that they want us to do. Would you like to fill this thing called EcoVadis? I don't know if you hear about it, but it's not a small thing. So of course I said, yeah, why not? I'll do this. So that was my real first step into like ESG. That was like almost more than 6 years ago. It was like stepping into a new world. For me, it was like going again when I stepped into that kitchen. It was a new language, a new system, but the same principle, right? It is systems, coordination, cross-functionality, and people working to give you answers, right? And the same goal. And that understanding shaped everything that came next, right? I think before reporting, before regulations, before data, before policy, I think ESG is social. And it succeeds with people doing the work. One, trust each other and trust you. Two, they understand the full picture of what they're doing. Three, their role fits into the whole. And four, they're empowered. They're not just doing a checkbox and doing this because they have to or because they have been told to, or it's because it's a compliance exercise. So I think in some organizations, if you think about it, and you're going to hear a lot of kitchen things here, which I love cooking, some organizations will give you some of the ingredients, right? So, for example, legal, I say they will get the beans, tech accounting will get a tomato, workplaces will get a duck, but I think at Box, what we want to do is that we want to give you the whole dish, right? And we got to give you what we call the whole cassoulet. If you haven't tried a cassoulet, it's a French dish that is delicious. Because I think when people understand the whole dish, when they understand the whole system, they do collaborate and they take ownership of what they're doing. That's what this matters for me. And I think this idea of context over compliance not just helped the program, but it did help me as well on how to run and lead this program. So I know you just mentioned about the alphabet soup, so I didn't come with a training for this alphabet soup, right? So if you see that, it was like TCFD, CDP, CSRD, ASRS. I mean, it just keeps going and going, and ESG practitioners tend not to really explain what it is. They would just tell you the things. So this is my new reality, this alphabet soup. And while I was doing this, I mean, the VP I mentioned have that ESG background, so I have like strategy, and we have like a path where to go. But I mean, she was also, you know, trying to bring my transfer skills from the kitchen, which is very high on program management, and really set the path so we can start building this program. I was still learning. So as I was doing this EcoVadis questionnaire, right, I remember logging in the computer for a BSR, Business for Responsibility call, for future of reporting. That was my first one. And there was folks like you on the other screen, like policy experts and really brilliant people. And I log in, and at one point somebody says, hey, we need to talk about and see how ISSB, IFRS, TCFD and SASB align together. And I was like, wow. So I remember just opening my notebook and saying, well, first I need to Google what is ISSB, IFRS, SASB, and TCFD, right? It should have been really intimidating, right? But I think also kitchens are very intimidating, and they're very complex operations, right? So it reminded me of this. It was a new language, but with the same principles. And actually with nicer people. Kitchens could be a little intense. Thank you. I think the kitchens, ESG in the kitchens is the same thing. It's a systems mindset, an operational mindset, and a people-first mindset, right? And in understanding the system, understanding the people, trusting the people, is what makes the program success. And that mindset and that kind of work is like how we transfer and we make the journey at Box. And because of our core values at Box, and that opportunity is somebody, me coming from a non-traditional talent, had the opportunity to build something new from scratch. So I was basically building the bicycle, right, as I was riding it, and that was great. But also, I didn't want to stop there, right? I went into the CSRD Institute. I took like PMI classes on Agile, Scrum, program management to be more in touch with the tech company. I went to Harvard sustainability classes. I want to make that kitchen experience into real capabilities as well. And the more I do these, the more expertise and understanding I get of these, what I found is like ESG is not something that you can do alone, right? It's a power by people, for people, right? So the more I learn about this, is like once we find one answer, then it will bring 3 more questions. And it will be more teams, like it will be or legal and procurement, and then it will be, I would say, touching mostly all of the company without being dramatic when we're asking these questions. So what I wanted to say here is we were looking, how can we make these people sit together and really help us, right? It's a program that touches the whole company, so it becomes really hard. So what we built was this brilliant idea. It was like, oh my God, this came to our minds. It's like, we're going to build ESG tiger teams, and probably some of you have already done it, but this is exactly what it sounds. It's like trying to solve complex problems, ESG problems, and just sit down and talk about the business, right? So at our company, we have 3 of those. It's build, enable, and go to market. Our engineers here together, legal, technical accounting, they all sit together on the same table, and the go-to-market teams like customer success, et cetera, et cetera. And then we brought them into like this cadence every month. Now they're starting to understand how their slice of the cake fit into our ESG story, right? They just don't doing things because they have to, right? So now we're breaking down that alphabet soup, and they also need to understand it because they didn't understand it, right? We're spreading context, not just a task list or like a compliance check. And also, we share the whole cassoulet with everybody. So now everybody knows the whole dish. And we build share ownership, right? And that's important. So now that people start working in silos, we can see how it was easier to start getting data, right? And at the beginning, when we built these Tiger teams, it was not easy, right? There was the questions, everything that was happening. And before, when we asked for data, it was like the question, and why? Why do we need this? It's like, who's doing this? And Box is a very rigorous company. It's like data privacy to an extent. So everything that we asked was always like question. But when we started our first greenhouse assessment, we did 2 years of enablement to all these teams. So now the roadblocks were gone. All that noise was gone, so the information came fast. And so instead of saying, like, why do we need this? It was like, here's the information, and how may I help you? How can we translate? How can we help the greenhouse assessment to be better? So now the Tiger teams are working. And for me, this was like a light bulb. It's like, I think ESG moves faster when people not just understand what they're doing, but they understand why they're doing it, right? I think when people understand these two, the word in a company spread around fast, and more people wanted to help. And this brings me to another story that happened during these EcoVadis submissions. This is 3 years later. We have a volunteer from our New York City office, Rob, works in Workplace Services, and we were stuck in some of the beautiful labor and ethics, labor and human rights and ethics questions. And he has no ESG, no framework, no policy expert. He didn't speak the alphabet soup, probably was as lost as I was when I was telling him like all these acronyms, right, when the day I Googled them at that webinar. But he understands systems. He understood how the building works. He knew other people that I didn't. He had access to other documents that I didn't. So he made us move forward. So not in weeks, not in months, but in days, he was able to find new documentation with backup from experts that not only send us the information, but actually got the EcoVadis questionnaire to keep like progressing little by little. So then this clicked for me, right? ESG is not built by making like these perfect frameworks, right? It moves forward when you build a community around it. And that community is not only built by obvious players, right, like the experts and the policy and the lawyers, but it's also by sometimes people that get overlooked. It could be a facilities technician who understands how the building breathes, right? It could be a shipping expert on your company that understands shipping and materials and where they go and how they go. Or it could be a front desk coordinator that sees waste streams that not even a consultant can see or see it before, right? So none of these roles have ESG on their title, right? None of them. But they all shape the footprint, the governance, and the culture of the company, as well as those experts. So it's a community that we're building. So for me, like the truth is, it's simple, right? Some of the most valuable ESG talent is hidden at plain sight, right? People who understand systems, people who can translate frameworks into decisions, can make the policy actually work, right? So that's how we try to build ESG at Box, and that's the way we've been doing it for the last 5 years. Not relying on one team or one framework, but building a community around the work. So with all this momentum, now we have the customers, right? We start getting that external pressure. And 5 years ago, a customer would just ask, hey, what is you have environmental policy? It was a very easy question to say yes or no. Now, the questions are way more complex, right? Do you have SBTi commitments? Do you have a greenhouse assessment, limited assurance? They have become more and more deep in how they've been asking all these questions. And for us, I think this didn't create any panic or conflict or people going like, oh my God, it actually created this alignment and it created deeper conversations on those Tiger teams. So suddenly those engineers that were talking with us, now they're more interested in our cloud. So we're building like a cost to serve model to help our customers, right? There's an effect that finance now wants to understand better how risks are going to help, and legal wants to look at contracts. So there's like this snowball effect. So now ESG, almost 6 years later, is no more a CSR checkbox or a nice thing to have that you talk every year and it just goes away. It becomes part of your daily business. as your daily conversations. And that becoming part of your daily business is obviously your customers as well. And one of our values at our company is blow our customers' minds. So to do that, we also wanted to understand what our customers want with those questions. So we start tracking and adding value to those questions. So we added TAV, and we find out what was the need behind the need, right? What patterns and priorities they were asking for. So at the end, that external pressure help create the internal culture we were building, right? And when this new responsibility and these new answers, what our customers want at the very end was reliable data. They wanted data, right? So what we decided to do is to expand the data we have, our data foundation, right? You cannot improve what you cannot measure. That's a simple fact that is very true. So we decided to take on, like I mentioned before, our greenhouse assessment project, right? It's like a snapshot for visibility of our footprint and how we generate the emissions we generate by doing our business on a daily basis. Simple stuff like that. And now that baseline now start changing the conversations within the team. Now we have data to talk about, and we actually have science, so our scientists now can start looking into this data and start getting better outcomes out of it. So because we are box and we like rigor behind it, when we talk to the GC, they're like, well, how can we trust this data, right? That's our pivotal moment. It's like, how are you sure that this data is good and clean? So again, we move to do limited assurance. First, we start with scope 1 and 2. Next year, scope 1, 2, and 3. But it's not just because we want to say here, it's because the stakeholders told me, and this is our data, and we share that to our customers. It's like now we have proof that we have validation that our data is good. So with that, data became our shared language, right? And that shared language became shared ownership. And that shared ownership is what culture is made of. But I think culture and all these beautiful things that we talk without good structure, without a good base, cannot move forward that much. It needs support. It needs something a structure that can keep the momentum moving, right? And at Box, I think is our governance, right? And we didn't build this like waterfall or really rigid governance style. That's what we build those tiger teams, right? We build a governance that is flexible in execution. So flexibility is really important, but it's clear in responsibility. Everybody understands what their role is and what their responsibilities are. And it's actually grounded in how people work and their expertise. And that's why I think, because of this governance, we create those tiger teams, right? So the people in their teams can coordinate in real time and understand each other. And they know what their role is. So now, again, finance owns disclosures. You know all the drill. I don't have to explain this to you. You probably know better than I do. So, but at the end, what we did as an ESG team is that we stitch all these teams together, right? And we help with the reporting. We are the one that is like gluing all these experts together and putting the dish at the end together. So now, with all this, also people were not guessing, right? They're not saying like, what do I give you this data for? Now they know where they fit. They understood where do they fit on the whole. What part of the casserole they are, right? If you want to call it that way. So it's governance that is clear and it's adaptable, has enough of a structure so you know who's responsible for what, enough to adapt fast, and is open for talk about risks or gaps or ideas, right? That's what the tiger teams are. So all of these also, and I think that was pretty cool, helped us to be prepared for things like SB 261, SB 253, CSRD without even have to panic or really rely on those regulations to start moving the program. The program was already moving. It was just kind of like adapting now to what regulation was coming. So at the end, governance didn't slow us down. It kept us aligned. So before I close, I know we want to go take a break, so I'm trying to move this fast. Something from central to my approach is like, now you know I'm a non-traditional ESG practitioner, right? I started as a chef, come from a place that has a lot of discipline. Like I work in Michelin-star restaurants, so discipline and rigor and coordination comes, and you have to work in almost a military-style way, right? So you learn all that. You learn logistics, schedule management. Then I moved to workplace services, deep in my operational mindset, workflows. And I think nothing of these screams an ESG resume. You don't see this in LinkedIn, you'll be like, wow, I'll hire this guy. This is great. Woof. But yet, all these background has shaped, and he keeps shaping the way I lead the program. He taught me that trust matters more than any theory you can give me. 2, execution, and I heard this before here, and somewhere else too, but somebody mentioned it yesterday, execution matters more than perfection. And 3, teams succeed when they understand the whole system, when they understand the whole, when they understand the why. And here's the point. It might be a little biased, but I'm going to say it anyway. ESG also needs non-traditional talent, right? Yes, it needs traditional talent, the policy experts, the scientists. They're the heartbeat, the central for what we do, but it does need the operations people. It needs the customer service, the logistic people, right? It needs the boots on the ground. It needs people who work in ambiguity and turns plans into the reality, right? The people that live this. So some of our best contributors have come from a non-traditional ESG background, and that's a fact. I lived it. I'm one of those, right? They bring a different outlook, a different approach, a fresh approach, and something that you might not even see it on plain sight. I think this approach outlasts teams and reporting cycles, and it turns a framework into a practice. Powered by people of different strengths and different views. So, at the end of the day, if I would tell you to take one thing from all that I say, is that ESG is built by people, right? Yes, frameworks, policy, all that, yes, is essential to what we do, but they only have an impact when people bring all this to life. So the real job for me is not to chase that perfect score or have the perfect speech or a perfect report, right? It's to build a system where people feel included, informed, understand the risks, understand the responsibilities, and when sustainability becomes part of the business. Not a cost center, but also a revenue center, right? And that's what we're building a box, and we're trying to keep building. It's a community, again, not a compliance program. So, and I think that's the hardest part of all this, and staying grounded on this and remembering that that it's easy to lose ourselves in all these acronyms and policies and frameworks and reporting, and confuse reporting with real progress. But somewhere between all these framework and all this work, I think the effects of all these always lands in people. Often the ones who will never read the policy, who will never work on the framework, but it would feel its impact first. That's where the work begins and where it should always come back to. So the last thing I'll tell you is, if you're feeling like an island if in your ESG work, I'm the only one practitioner in my company, I encourage you to look around, to your left, to your right, and think about who you might want to invite, right? You might surprise who might you end up cooking with. Thank you.